What inspires you?
It's changed from time to time. It's changed with age. When I started my work, I wanted a lot to express myself, but also to demonstrate things. When I live or I hear about a story that puts the human condition in question and puts human behavior in brutal context. So this is what was very triggering for me, because I was brought up in communism, which was a very violent state. It was permanently violent state. Dictatorship was violent. Not necessarily the ideology, but the dictatorship. Generations of parents and grandparents were also in this situation, so I think I was used with a bit more hardcore stories, maybe. I think it's very hard to process yet, although I read a lot about it, I read about what went on. I'm thinking that usually artists are sometimes like these kind of chemistry balls in which you manage to gather things from what happens around and they express it out in like a formula. They manage to synthesize very well, poetically or, I don't know, conceptually, to voice out maybe stories of millions of people that have something in common. And the pandemic itself, I think it was too intimate to discuss yet, but actually not, now that I'm thinking, because here at MuseumsQuartier, my residency is very much about how and for how long and how much we help each other. Like what are the limits of help and what are the triggers that also makes us withdraw, separate from giving help to somebody in need or in sufferance. And this kind of boundaries in front of human pain, I think. I think this was kind of triggered by the pandemic because it was a time when everybody cried. I think many people, now when I talk to my friends, I don't know if this happens to you or to people in Vienna. I don't know how you emotionally express culturally, but people I saw, I heard and I was told very often about crying.
Did you cry?
Of course, yes. But I don't think it was because of the pandemic. Like, I don't remember today I'm gonna cry about COVID. I also had COVID and I cried. It was so stressful for me, the experience, that by crying, I think I could release the anxiety around having a severe form. And I was asymptomatic, like I didn't have any symptom, but I was still under a lot of pressure. So yeah, actually it's really funny. For 3 or 4 days, I had a pain in my eye at the beginning of my corona experience, my disease. And when I cried, it just released the pain. It was in the back of my eye. It's like when I don't know what it was, maybe it was something medical. But yeah, I cried, everybody cries, as the song says, and I'm very interested in how people coped, but it's very hard to tell yet how if they did or not.
Just let me mention that this is an attempt to
discover.
Yeah, and to maybe the process you describing as a very intimate and isolated process for each and every one of us.
Exactly.
But still we have the possibility to speak about it, and then maybe there's some kind of a semblance. You can say, okay, wow, I experienced quite the same thing, or maybe I heard quite the same thing.
Maybe you find points of commonality, points of contact between stories, or at least points of empathy in which you can relate, although, for example, I could not relate with the stories of my friends having children and being stuck at home with very young kids because I don't have children. So I couldn't feel exactly, I couldn't understand what they're going through. It was a very particular experience that only people in these conditions can understand.
And this very fact,
Yeah.
was this like responsible maybe for some alienation from some people in your life?
Of
Or-
course, because everybody had their priorities. Everybody turned immediately from maybe acquaintances or friends to the super close friends, to the super close family. So people became very cellular, like islands of protection. Also because you were fearing not to catch the disease and not to expose your closed ones. So people turned into real small clusters of trust and of similar, I don't know, life experiences, similar needs. The ones with families were talking about that. How do you do with your kids? Let's, I don't know, bring them up together or make them meet because we're going crazy. I heard these stories from certain friends. Single people had their own experience. I mean, being single in the house for months, I think it must have been really, really harsh. People with couple problems had their own experience, so it was kind of like a segment of problems. And artistically, they were not addressed. At least in my country, art didn't come to meet these urgent emotional struggles. Film, theater, music, visual art, no one did anything, how can I say, consistent. There were projects here and there, but I couldn't see a community of artists doing what they do best, art, creativity, in order to address this. And people turned towards art, but mostly towards series or films that they could stream. So everybody found their medicine, and I think art was not part of the medicine that cured COVID.
Do you think that the distance to other people also gives like more courage to express emotions?
No. I think it makes people keep them for themselves, because the distance that you have to do in order to express yourself, if it's small, like not physically, but you trust the other person, you feel safe with them, then you can express yourself because you feel that you're not going to be betrayed or rejected or laughed or bullied. If the distance becomes bigger, then you have to do a bigger effort. You don't know if you're going to get understood. You don't know if that person has the time or the energy to focus on your perspective and your problems. So as far as the community that I have studied, or the community I was in touch with, I saw that people isolated from all points of view, they became more sensitive, expressing themselves, but I don't know if they are heard. So I don't know if it's just an exercise of just releasing what you feel out there, or if it's an exercise of communication and dialogue, and if anything comes back to you, or you just have to just get it out, like when you just burst, when you do yoga and there are these sounds to release negative energy.
Because maybe the other person isn't quite ready to really
Yeah, I
listen.
mean, who wants to hear moaning and sadness? You read it in the news all the time, and then you think, okay, so I need to find somebody positive to connect during the pandemic, but that's really hard because everyone is stressed and worried and even sick. So I think that the links between people became more thin, and maybe the links within people became stronger. And I don't know what I feel about this.
One last question on a scale of 0 to 10.
Yes.
How optimistic are you about the future?
Our future? my future, the future. Oh my God. 10 being very optimistic and 1 being very pessimistic. Eight, but I want to believe in this 8. I don't know if I'm being realistic about it, but yeah, 8.
Okay. Well, what do you think? What do you think we have achieved in this conversation?
I think it's very precious that you are really interested to talk about the personal inside the collective, in a way. So individual experiences, but how they create a whole. I think that makes me think. I also like your hat, so that made me feel more cheerful. It's a good opportunity to reflect out loud. And it's also responsible because the things you say might create some sort of resonance into somebody else. So you cannot just say whatever. I couldn't just say whatever crosses my mind, although almost. And we achieved sort of maybe understanding a little bit more something.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's a summer program.
Super. And you edit it, no? You edit?
Yes.
You edit.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Very interesting.
For me too.